Thank you, Anand. First of all, thank you. We're doing this on a Friday evening. I'd love my viewers to know this. Thank you for taking the time out, Anand.
It's always a
Um,
pleasure, and this is the least that I can ever do for you, Shweta. So the pleasure is all mine. The pleasure was more in reading the book. Whatever I read resonated so much with me because that is the same philosophy that I've always followed in my corporate career. And in fact, since the time that I have been with VMart, this is one thing that I've always told the management here as well, the board here as well, that we need to work in a way that we are able to create more trust within the team members at all levels. It's not just at one level, L1, L2, L3 level, but across all levels. And I have seen wonders happen because of that. And I really hope and wish that more leaders and more corporate citizens could imbibe the same lessons that you have so painstakingly put together in the book in such a good form.
Thank you so much, Anand. And to all the viewers, I would also like to tell them Anand also has, apart from his distinguished career in finance, also has the credentials of having run your own business. For someone who's been an entrepreneur and then been what I call the conscience keeper of the organization, because that's what, in some sense, the CFO's role is. Based on your entire career, how do you see these cohesion and trust leaks eventually impact on hard numbers, especially in your case and in your team? Because ultimately the CFO, these line roles are the one where numbers matter, right? People will say that culture eventually gets you there, but look, hey, what was your gross operating profit, or things like that. But how have you seen this line of sight play out?
Everything eventually gets connected only at numbers level. So whatever we do and whatever we don't do, so
Mm,
the existence of something and even the absence of something eventually in a
mm,
corporate life will always reflect in the bottom line, whether today
mm.
or tomorrow, and if you are very lucky, day after tomorrow, but not beyond that. So
Yeah.
it's just a question of timing. And
Mm,
when we do not create or we do not imbibe situations where we are able to shoulder each other's pains, we are not able to share each other's pains or victories. uh, I've very, very clearly seen that very successful organizations begin to fail, and
mm,
the crumbling start very early, and you can see it beginning. Maybe it's from one small department or one small action that somebody does, and then the others are not able to connect to it, and then something else happens. So it's a very simple things like in an organization you start favoring one particular person, and without
mm,
sharing with the others why that one particular person is getting that extra benefit or that extra due, and suddenly it starts with some form of jealousy, and then it develops into distrust, and then it starts to develop into disperformance, then starts to reflect into the numbers at some stage, and eventually the entire organization starts to come crumbling down. And I have seen it not just at very close quarters, but also seen it happen across the strata of multiple companies. So it's not what you are saying is so relevant, and it's the most commonsensical thing to observe. But the sad part is, usually whatever is the most common things to observe is something that people miss the most. But this is definitely absolutely true, that it definitely will translate, has translated, and always will translate into numbers at some stage. I can share some examples with you. I can share some personal experiences with you. But my journey of last 27, 28 years, 29 years has always seen this happen at multiple levels in different parts of the organization.
mm. And you said something very interesting, and I want to pick that part up, Anand. One leader's behavior. And of course, the leader who is, like you said, maybe favoring someone, in their head, the story is very rational. But that story is not transparent. More importantly, that story is not defensible, not visible. So it creates immediately an asymmetry. And one leader's one action, one consistent, let's say, lack of judgment, or poor opacity of communication, lack of transparency, the entire group experiences it. So while trust is very strong, it also requires what I call, cleaning the gutters for the leader to reflect that, hey, am I really being honest, or am I being transparent? That kind of a mechanism. Now, I know you work and have worked, but I know for a fact that you work with a team of extremely bright, also extremely ambitious people. And what happens with ambitious people is that, I say this is the human tendency. We want to get along, but we also want to a little bit get ahead, right? So there's competition. And in that, there is this, what I call the results versus relationships. You can't always be balanced. Some things goes a little out of balance. What, if any, practices or reflections have you done, or do you use to kind of, make sure that the group is cohesive, so that these kind of things, if any, get metabolized, get processed, and the group doesn't carry the residue?
These are very normal human psyches, and irrespective of whatever we choose to do or we do not choose to do, one very important trait of leadership is to make sure that people around you feel empowered. You also need to cultivate a sense of competition. It's not always very fair not to develop that sense of competition. You have to give opportunities to people. The brighter ones will perform better. The not so brighter ones also need to perform or come at part, or at least realize that why I am not able to do better, and can I, as a leader, can I encourage them or provide them with more impetus to at least be at par or get ahead. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work also. But yes, it's a very normal and natural thing that people will get competitive, and especially when there are a lot of bright people around, we will have that situation. But the problem is not that that competition is there and somebody will do one-upmanship, etc. The problem usually comes when people resort to some unethical means, or get into some integrity traps, or get into some shortcuts. And that is when the trust element starts to break or starts fading away. And it takes a bit of a time for the others to realize actually what is happening. But till that time, it does not become a level playing field for the others. And that is when the seeds of dissonance and the resonance starts to get separated. And that is what a leader's job actually is, to make sure that he is able to spot on or what exactly is happening, and make sure that that trust is equally divided or equally provided to all parts of the organization, not just one or two individuals. But the tricky part here is that you need to have a trust, but also a counterbalance with the controls. So
Mm.
only one-sided trust or empowerment or encouragement is not going to work. So you have to have a counterbalance of some amount of checks, some amount of supervision also at times, not always. So you should not be micromanaging, but at the same time you should be in control of actually what is happening and why it is happening, so that you are able to also guide and mentor the rest of the team and the rest of the organization in actually seeing through how it is actually going to turn out. Otherwise, you can just get into a bit of a surprise.
Absolutely. I think I am reminded of what, when I was at Honeywell, the one of our very senior leaders used to say, trust but verify. And that is what it is. There's conditional trust, and then there is unconditional trust. So unconditional trust remains so till you break it once, and then it is conditional trust. So I think I completely agree with you. And ever since I started researching this topic, and this was a few years back actually, the book came out last year, but researching it, and also administering these surveys, then doing all the interviews, etc. My one big hope actually is that, just as how organizations today see that, employee engagement, if you work on that, that will give people a motivated and an outcome oriented and a future looking organization. Similarly, my hope and vision is that if leaders invest in creating high cohesion, which basically means that, call a spade, focus on outcome, focus on goal. But hey, we take care of each other, but results matter. And let's get rid of the, like we say, the human biases and the stories around it. Then all the people who come to work, because other than home, we have our work and we look forward to it with so much passion. लोग 10-10 12-12 घंटे डालते हैं काम पे, तो वहां पे अगर हाई ट्रस्ट होगा और वो मेजर होगा, तो अपने आप लीडर्स को ये दिखेगा कि अच्छा, इफ आई हैव अ हाई ट्रस्ट वर्क प्लेस, then it becomes important to me. So that was the whole purpose of writing the book. And I remembered one quote you had told me when you read the book. You said, Shweta, this book is not written in a long winded story, it's very much like a handbook. It's very practical.
I think the biggest part and the best part about the book that has always remained with me is that it's actually not a normal book. Probably it's wrong to call it a book. It's more a handbook of what to do and how to do it. It's a practical guide. And that's exactly what has stayed with me. So there are two elements that I really, admire from, whatever you have put together. One is that it's in a very easy to do format rather than easy to learn format. So, for a person who really wants to implement what you've stated, it's a very complete guide in terms of how do you want to go about it. And these are the checklists, these are the forms that you really need to fill. And you have actually provided the forms itself in the book itself. Part I think I've always thought about is that whatever gets measured gets done.
Yeah.
And that is one thing, measurement of trust is something that I have struggled for a very long time. While I've believed in the, theory of trust for as long as I can remember, but I've always struggled that how do you really measure trust? And your book was the first instance where I could get a glimmer of hope that, you can actually do this. So this is possible. I've tried to do it once or twice, but I still need some, expert help from you, which I will request you for. In fact, I had also spoken to Murli that how do you really, can you measure trust? And he had referred me to some articles. And then he actually came back and told me, oh, why don't you speak to Shweta? Then I connected the dots and
Yes.
absolutely right. So these are the two things and which are so different and so refreshing and so useful. So it's not like a book that you read and just forget. It's a book that you read and then you use. And you don't need to refer to it every day because this is something so commonsensical and is so obvious that it stays with you. So these are the two elements that I have always, sort of remembered and always, thought that how more can I use them in my day-to-day work.
I love it when organizations want to improve cohesion. I feel like it's a basic human right. So, very happy to help you. As you were reading it, or even otherwise, beyond just the book and now extending it into the different elements, the whole point of taking care, benevolence, or the whole point of reciprocity or dependability, where we talk about, can I depend on you? Are you dependable as a person? But is there enough competence also? That also is an ability. So trust cannot happen. I can't say, well, oh, you can't say, Shweta, I trust you, knowing well that maybe Shweta doesn't have the competence. It's not just intent, it has to be also backed up with that capability for impact, right? Now, when you thought of all of these and as you were putting your thoughts together, what thoughts or what points or ruminations are top of your mind as you think about this?
One thing I would especially want to mention here is, trust is something which is never one-sided. So while as a leader, I would want to trust everybody in my team and therefore I would want to empower them more and more. But I have always come to this conclusion that while you can do this, but if the other person also reciprocates, and not just because that you are sitting in a particular chair, but that reciprocation usually comes from respect, and that respect comes from delivery. So if you lead by example and if you are actually able to, walk the talk, you will generate respect. And the other side of trust, from the recipient side will only start coming when that respect and that belief in that leader is actually there. Otherwise, you can keep trusting everybody, but unless it is reciprocated, so it will not really work as well as if it were the, it was a two-way traffic. So that has been my very big takeaway from my experience. And I have seen multiple areas, multiple, I see it every day. So whatever team that I have, so there are people who have blind faith in me. There are people who have some amount of faith in me, and some people also work just because they know that it's coming from the chair high above, and therefore I need to do this. And you can see very clearly the level of commitment and the level of passion and the level of ownership that each of these three layers will deliver. And that is where the issue of reciprocity and mutual respect and mutual trust comes in. So that is something that has always helped me in identifying which are the teams and which are the people that you should put more of your faith and trust in.
Absolutely. I think compliance versus commitment is a very different. The leader can immediately sense this person is complying, but this person is committing, and you can't commit without some level of wrestling with it. And so people who ask more questions or who disagree, they'll say, no, maybe, no, I don't agree with you, or tell us, Anand, why you want us to do it. Actually, those are the real assets. But very often, under the pressure of time, what happens is we tend to favor people who agree and are compliant, because that's also how we've been groomed. How have you seen, and I want you to sort of share more on this, on how do you deal with this challenge that some people, and it's also a people thing. And I'll add one more layer here. When I was interviewing Murli, he said something very interesting, and actually it has become the seed for my second book. He said, well, you can't trust someone else till you are able to trust yourself. You need to have that inner capability, the inner substance. Because whenever I trust someone, there is a chance that that person will let me down. And I have to be able to withstand that. So people who are fundamentally not, secure or strong, and we call it the coherent, their own coherence is shaken, they will always struggle. Or at the first sign of distress, the trust will disappear. It will dissipate. In your team or in your experience, how have you dealt with people who have, the easy ones, the trustworthy, the ones who commit and sort of argue and engage passionately? That's an easy one. But then there are people who are complying and not really committing for many reasons. How have you dealt with such situations, if at all, or such people? What's been your experience, Anand?
I'll give you examples, Shweta. I was with a company and I joined there as a CFO. And I think within 1 month, my CEO called me and he said, there's another subsidiary that is coming up, and I need to devote my full attention to that particular business. I want you to take over as the business head role. It was just 1 month into the job, and I just begun to knew him. But in 1 month, probably we had developed very good chemistry, and we had started to like each other a lot. And there was a mutual trust and relationship where we had sort of a chemistry going. So within 1 month, I moved from a CFO position. So technically, I remained a CFO, but I moved from a CFO position to sort of a CEO or a business head role. And for 6 years, I ran that business. And for that entire period of 6 years, there was absolutely no disconnect, and I was running it exactly like the way he should. And we never ever had a chance of, nobody in the company, in the board, nobody had a chance to complain that, things are not going well. And in fact, the board, even today, when I meet them or we have any conversations, that those are the 6 years that they remember, that this business went places because we took this chance on this young guy and he delivered. So this thing actually works both ways. And as you were rightly saying, the impact of small actions or one small thing on the other and what it leads to is something which is very difficult once it gets out of control. So while trust is very welcome, but it has to be, very carefully managed also. And you have to
Yes.
be very, very transparent Without transparency, it really doesn't work. So you have something in your mind, but you say something else and still expect that you will have people who will still trust you. It doesn't work like that. But as I said in my last organization, it worked exactly the opposite way.
Hmm.
So with multiple people, you can have multiple experiences, but your faith and your, conscious is what has to keep you going.
Very true. One of the metaphors when I was writing the book, trust is like steel. It can bind teams that are maybe in different countries together, but it is also precious and fragile like gossamer silk. Once it breaks, and even if you tie it, it will have a knot. You can repair it, and but it will have a knot. So one, like you rightly said, and I think very few leaders get it. And here I want to come to the last part, Anand, which is about containment. And I don't know if you're watching the Made in India Titan series on, which is now on Amazon. And of course, I'm a big fan of the Tatas, but also because it's telling, I love growth stories. I love growth consumer brands, and I always look for inspiration for my own business. So seeing this story is very inspiring. But one thing that happens even among the most competent and the most well meaning individuals during growth times or during crisis, people will retract and regress. They will lose their tempers or they may be quiet when they should have said something. That happens. Moments of crisis, we all regress, we contract. At that point in time, it's very important that leaders develop the capability to what I say become containers. And during times of great expansion or in any crisis, the first thing to do is expand your muscle, inner capability muscle. I know, especially also VMart and retail operates on trust. I think there is no other way to say it because you have so much of SKUs and so many things. It is trust. At the end of the day, it's literally the lifeblood of the organization. If you had to give advice to leaders out there and maybe also your team members who will be listening to parts of this, what would you say to those leaders?
My experience, and I do keep sharing with the rest of my team always, is that you have come to a certain level. Now it's your chance to make sure that you are also able to create more leaders and more empowered people around you and in all parts of your team. And if you really want to do that, the first thing is that you have to provide opportunity. And trust is the first part where that opportunity begins. So unless you start empowering people, and empowerment not just comes with the signing authority or not just comes with a decision making authority, it also comes with the invisible bond that the person feels safe, that he feels safe that I can take something, I can do something, but I will not fear the reprimand. I will not fear that somebody will tell me, why did you do this? So that is the first step. But not just because for the sake of doing it, you should do it because you really want to do it. And that is when it will really want to, show up. And you will be surprised with the results. So, as you rightly said, retail is a very, very difficult business and it's a very, very distributed business. So, we have like 14,000 people working across India and we have like 600 odd stores. Now, every store has stocks worth more than 1.5 to 2 crores. It has capex of more than one and a half crores. Now every store manager, there are 20 people working in one individual store, so everything is entrusted to them. Now the moment I start doubting that what are they going to do with it, the moment I start policing them, the moment I start thinking, okay, how will I lock them or how will I lock this stuff, that is the day I lose their trust, and that is the day then they will start taking advantage. But that's not the point. The point is that if we have to run big ships, if we have to run big businesses, you will have to trust. You will have to learn to trust. You will have to learn to empower people. You will have to learn to delegate and not really be so paranoid that things are going to come at a standstill and things are not always going to fall flat. Now, it's easier said than done, but it starts from the top. So if I don't do it, my teams will not do it. If my teams do not do it, then their teams are not going to do it. So it is extremely important that the messaging has to come from the top. And that is the biggest message, biggest, learning that I have had across the years, that I can't do everything on my own. In fact, I really don't do anything. The only thing that I do is I talk to people. I just make sure that they are able to do what they want to do, and the teams below them are able to do what they really want to do. It's just that we set the right guidelines, we get this, we set the right guardrails so that they have some direction in which they need to go and they don't get, withered away. So that is the only thing that a leader really needs to perform, and everything else largely will fall in place. But yes, strategic choices, strategic decisions, that always will come hand in hand. But the biggest part is the people. You are a people person, Shweta. You know it much, much better than I do. Organizations are built on people, not just process. So people run the company, process don't run the company. If we don't have the right people, if we don't have the right trust in the right people, whatever kind of process you want, you can build, but it's not going to take you anywhere. So people are the biggest asset for any organization. And if we do not have the right trust in that set of people, it's not going to yield any results.
I loved what you said, Anand. I was just thinking about what you said. It's not just delegating task, you have to delegate the trust.
Yeah.
Not just the signing authority, but the trust that I trust you will do it. And if it goes wrong. As you look back on your career, and I know that there are very interesting things ahead that you're looking forward to as well. If you see people who are behaving in a way that they are not being boundaryless or behaving siloed, how do you deal with it, especially if that person is, like I said, the inner coherence is not everybody is fully transparent all the time, and that takes some time, and people have uh, खुद की मिट्टी में अपनी एक बात होती है, तो what to say, what have been some practices that have worked for you as a leader when you work with leaders who are not really forthcoming, or you're finding that I'm going to have to kind of tell them that this is how I would like to operate with trust. So you have to literally elevate the trust quotient and the responsibilities on you. How do you do it?
I'll give you a very live example. When I joined VMart, what I could very immediately sense was that they hardly spoke to each other. My L1s. So they did all the work. They were very efficient. They were very good in their work, but they just didn't work cross-functionally. They will talk officially. They will work with each other for official purposes, but they would not just go out together. They would not talk about non-work issues, and that is the basic. The basic bond was missing. And I think it took me almost 1.5, 2 years before I said, कि यार enough is enough. I just can't take it anymore. So I started taking them out myself. भाई तुम नहीं जा रहे हो, चलो मैं तुम्हें लेके चलता हूँ. So we started celebrating birthdays of everybody, and it became like a ritual. तो धीरे धीरे करके थोड़ा सा बॉन्ड बनना शुरू हुआ. And one day I actually said कि okay, I am sending 4 of you to Goa. Don't come back till the time you are really bonding so well that you are missing the office and you want to, you know. So they actually took a week off. I sent them on a paid holiday. It was like a offsite, but only the 4 of them. Two of them missed the flight. They found other reasons to reach the same hotel, and they spent really good 4 days together. And the amount of fun that they had, and no strategy, no agenda, just spending time with each other. That's it. And after they came back, it was such a whale of a difference, versus what they used to do and versus what they then began to do. Even in terms of the messaging that they started to, give down below to their teams. So the entire department then suddenly came together. And it was, so amazing to see the chemistry after that, and the kind of work that these four then delivered together. And after that, we did two M&A transactions, we did a fundraise, but it just went off in such a, jiffy, that I never had to remind anybody that, you need to do that or you need to do this. It just happened with so much of good precision and clockwork. But the only missing ingredient before that was that they just did not had any, relationship, so to call, outside of work. So that trust or the bond was not there. So you just had to push a little bit, provide them the platform or provide them the opportunity to know each other slightly more better, and then start doing things which could have, otherwise also happened, but that just needed a small bit of a, a prodding.
No, and that's, I mean, I was just thinking about it. I wish more leaders would do this. First of all, it's a huge act of trust on your part, Anand, because you're not saying, hey, go to this workshop or, let me call a facilitator. Sure, that works. But you're saying it's completely organic. But the outcome or the goal is very clear. I need you to trust each other enough so that the relationship that the four of you have must survive conflict. In fact, the most closest relationships we have are with friends with whom we can fight and disagree and, not worry about the fact, as we very often see on the VMart board. I tell everybody that, it's really admirable. And now the last question. It requires a lot of work that you do for yourself, because when you do these are like, referring back to Murli, acts of risk, because in every time you give trust, first step, it may not be reciprocated. It may go south ways. All of that might happen. So one has to work on how has that journey been for you, and what have you done? What have you learned? How do you work through that yourself?
See, I keep it very simple. I always believe first. So irrespective of the other person reciprocating or not, I always assume that, I will do what I need to do. I will hope for the best. I will try my best. And I would say 90% of the time I succeed. There are always, 10% misses also. I trusted a lot of people, I empowered a lot of people, and I also put my faith behind some of their aspirations and growths also. But sometimes people have bigger aspirations, sometimes also people have different challenges in life, and therefore they may not give it back to you in as much stead. But I think the basic part, I have been very convinced that if I am clear and I have a clear conscience that, I want to do this, I want to trust you, and I want to empower you, very, very seldom that, that trust gets broken. It may not get reciprocated fully, but I think we are usually, fairly there. But that original intent has to be very open and very clear, and it actually shows up in your body language. It's not like you have to make it up, and you can't really make it up. So you have to show it, and if you are genuine, and if you have a clean conscience, you have a clean integrity, you have a clean heart, you're not asking for undue favors, you're not asking for, people to go beyond the line of duty or doing something wrong. I don't think, it will never work. It always works. My experience has been that, if you are clear, then, usually things will come out. But yes, your body language, your face, your intent, everything has to go in tandem.
I love this. Just going to be my takeaway for the evening, Anand. You said if you assume trustworthiness, the person will show up with trustworthiness, but you have to hold it with your heart and soul and not pretend it. Thank you so much, Anand.